Every hotel on this list is real. You can book a room tonight if you want. Some people do, deliberately, because they want the experience. Others find out what the room is known for after they have already paid. Those are the ones who tend to leave reviews worth reading. 10 hotel rooms. And in each case, at least one guest who decided that whatever they were paying per night was not worth finishing the stay. Number 10. The George Hotel, Crawley, West Sussex. The George has been standing on Crawley High Street since the 15th century. It started as a coaching inn, one of the stops on the old London to Brighton road, back when that journey took the better part of a day by horse. Travellers would stop here, eat, sleep, and move on. Some of them, according to local accounts, did not move on as planned. The cellar of the George has a history that the hotel does not advertise loudly. It was used as a holding area for smugglers, men caught moving contraband along the Sussex coast, before they were taken out and hanged on the forecourt. Not transported somewhere else, hanged outside the front door, the forecourt where guests now park their cars. The ghost most associated with the George is a night watchman known in local folklore as Mark Hurston, though some older accounts spell the name differently. The story goes that he died after drinking poisoned wine somewhere in the building. The exact circumstances, depending on who is telling it, change slightly each time. What stays consistent across every version is that he died here and that something in the older sections of the building has been unsettling guests and staff ever since. The sightings, the cold spots, the sounds in the corridor at 2 in the morning, these are local legend, not forensic record. But the cellar is real. The history of what that cellar was used for is real. And the gallows association with the forecourt is documented in local historical accounts. The building earned its reputation long before anyone started marketing it as haunted. Number 9. Ettington Park Hotel, Stratford-upon-Avon, Warwickshire. Ettington Park is a Victorian Gothic mansion. It was built in 1858, though the estate itself has records going back to the Domesday Book of 1086. Nearly 1,000 years of continuous human occupation on the same ground before the current building went up. In 1963, it was used as the filming location for The Haunting, a horror film based on Shirley Jackson's novel The Haunting of Hill House. The production team chose Ettington Park specifically because of its atmosphere. They did not need to dress the building. They used it as it was. Since then, the hotel has accumulated a consistent body of guest accounts. Not ghost tour folklore, but actual reviews and documented complaints passed to the hotel. Unexplained footsteps in empty corridors. A woman in Victorian dress seen near the chapel, which sits in the grounds and predates the current mansion. Guests on the upper floors reporting the sound of children running when no children were present in that part of the building. The hotel is Grade 2 listed. It operates as a 4-star country house hotel. The chapel in the grounds contains the tombs of the Shirley family, who owned the estate for centuries. The dead are buried in the garden. The guests sleep 40 feet away. Nobody mentions that in the brochure. Number 8. Jamaica Inn, Bodmin Moor, Cornwall. Bodmin Moor at night is not somewhere most people choose to be. The road across it is straight, exposed, and completely dark outside the headlights. Jamaica Inn sits roughly in the middle of it, built in 1750, extended in 1778, and Grade 2 listed. It has been a stop for travellers crossing the moor for nearly 300 years. During the 18th century, the moor made Jamaica Inn ideal for smugglers. Tea, brandy, silks, contraband moved through this part of Cornwall in enormous quantities, and the inn sat at the centre of it. Daphne du Maurier stayed here in 1930 and based her novel Jamaica Inn on what she found: the isolation, the history, the atmosphere of a place that had spent decades deliberately keeping secrets. The most documented unexplained incident at Jamaica Inn involves a man who left the bar one evening, walked outside for some air, and was found dead on the moor the following morning. No killer was ever identified. No cause of death was conclusively established. The inn's own museum references it. A figure seen sitting silently on the wall outside is, according to the inn's own accounts, believed to be connected to that night. The moor does not help. On a clear night, the silence out there is absolute. On a bad night, the wind comes across the heather at a pitch that does not sound entirely natural. Guests who book Jamaica Inn for the romance of it occasionally find that romance has a specific texture after dark that they were not prepared for. Number 7. Lumley Castle Hotel, Chesterler Street, County Durham. Lumley Castle has been standing since the 1390s. Sir Ralph Lumley received his license to fortify the site in 1389, and the structure that went up is still largely intact today, now operating as a luxury hotel with 4-poster beds, fine dining, and a ghost story that has been attached to the building for 6 centuries. The legend of Lily of Lumley is exactly that, a legend. Local tradition holds that a woman named Lily, connected to the Lumley family, was murdered by 2 priests on the castle grounds after a religious dispute, and that her body was thrown down a well. The well still exists. Whether Lily existed in the form the legend describes is a question historians treat with considerable caution. She does not appear in the castle's documented records in any clear form. The story, in the version most commonly told, contains a historical impossibility. The religious conflict described belongs to a period roughly 140 years after the alleged murder took place. What is not a legend is this. In 2005, the Australian cricket team stayed at Lumley Castle during an Ashes tour. Shane Watson became so unsettled during his stay that he left his room in the middle of the night and went to Brett Lee's room instead. Watson later said with some honesty that having been told the ghost stories beforehand, his imagination may have done most of the work. Maybe. But he still left his room, and he still did not go back. A professional athlete, staying in a luxury castle hotel, abandoning his room at 2 in the morning. Make of that what you will. Number 6. Chillingham Castle, Northumberland. Chillingham Castle sits in Northumberland, close to the Scottish border, and its history reflects exactly what that location meant for several centuries. This was contested ground. The border between England and Scotland was not a line on a map, but a shifting, violent frontier, and Chillingham sat in the middle of it. The current castle structure dates to the 14th century, with records of fortification on the site going back further. The castle contains what is described as a torture chamber, and this is not marketing language. The instruments, the room, the documented use of it during the border conflicts of the medieval period are part of the castle's recorded history. The current owner, Sir Humphrey Wakefield, has been open about what the building's past contains. The Blue Boy. This is the story Chillingham is most associated with, and it is worth telling carefully. For a long time, guests staying in the Pink Room reported seeing a boy surrounded by a blue or radiant light appearing near one particular section of wall. The accounts were consistent enough and persistent enough to be notable. During restoration work in the castle, the accounts differ on exactly when workers opened that section of wall. Inside, they found the skeletal remains of a child, along with fragments of blue material. The remains were removed and given a proper burial. According to the castle's own records, the frequency of sightings in that room decreased noticeably afterwards. The castle is careful not to claim this as proof of anything. It is documented as what happened: the discovery, the burial, the change in reported activity. Draw your own conclusions. Number 5. The Feathers Hotel, Ludlow, Shropshire. The Feathers Hotel in Ludlow was built in 1603, the same year Elizabeth I died and James I took the throne. The timber-framed facade is one of the most photographed buildings in England, all dark wood and jutting upper floors, the kind of building that looks exactly like what it is, 400 years old, and not particularly interested in modernizing. It is Grade I listed, the highest designation Historic England applies. That means it is considered to be of exceptional interest. The building has been receiving guests continuously for over 4 centuries. The accounts associated with the Feathers are not the dramatic kind. No levitating furniture, no bleeding walls. They are quieter than that, which in some ways makes them harder to dismiss. Guests on the upper floors reporting a presence in the room when the room is empty. The sound of movement in corridors that, when checked, contain nobody. A persistent cold in certain rooms that has no obvious structural explanation and does not respond to heating. The hotel itself does not heavily promote its paranormal reputation. It promotes the history, the architecture, the food. The ghost stories come mostly from guests, passed on in reviews and accounts, accumulated over decades. When you have been hosting people for 420 years, The stories accumulate whether you encourage them or not. Ludlow is a quiet market town in Shropshire. Nobody goes to the Feathers expecting a horror film. That, if the accounts are accurate, is precisely the point. Number 4. The Talbot Hotel, Oundle, Northamptonshire. The Talbot Hotel was established in 1552 and rebuilt on its current site in 1626. It is a solid, handsome coaching inn in the Northamptonshire market town of Oundle, the kind of building that looks permanent because it is. Inside the hotel, in the bar area, there is an oak staircase. Local tradition, and it should be noted clearly that this is tradition rather than verified provenance, holds that the staircase was salvaged from Fotheringhay Castle, a few miles away, when that castle was partially demolished in the early 17th century. Historic England records the connection as popularly believed, not as confirmed historical fact. Fotheringhay Castle is where Mary Queen of Scots was executed on the 8th of February 1587. She was 38 years old. She had been imprisoned for 19 years. On the morning of her execution, she walked down the staircase of Fotheringhay to the great hall where the block had been set up. If the tradition is accurate, and it may not be, that staircase is now in a hotel bar in Northamptonshire. Guests walk up and down it to get to their rooms. Mary Queen of Scots is reported, by multiple guests over many years, to appear on the upper stairs and in 2 of the rooms at the top. Whether the staircase is genuinely from Fotheringhay or not, the story has weight. The execution was real, the castle was real, and the woman on the stairs, whatever she is, has been reported consistently enough that the hotel now acknowledges her presence in its own written history. Number 3. The Mermaid Inn, Rye, East Sussex. The Mermaid Inn in Rye is one of the oldest continuously operating inns in England. The hotel dates its cellars to 1156, though Historic England, in its listing, places them more broadly in the 13th century. The building above those cellars was rebuilt in 1420. The Tudor editions came in the 16th century. It has been receiving guests in one form or another for the better part of 900 years. In the 1730s and 1740s, the Mermaid Inn served as a secondary headquarters for the Hawkhurst gang, one of the most violent smuggling operations in English history. They controlled territory from Kent to Dorset. Their leaders, Arthur Grey and Thomas Kingsmill, were eventually caught and executed. Grey in 1748, Kingsmill in 1749. The tunnels beneath the old cellar connected the Mermaid to nearby buildings, used for moving contraband and moving people quickly when necessary. Queen Elizabeth I stayed here in 1573. The inn is Grade 2 star, listed by Historic England. The ghost accounts at the Mermaid are specific in a way that is harder to wave away than most. Room 17, the Kingsmill room, named after the executed smuggler, had a rocking chair that moved on its own and caused the room temperature to drop sharply and repeatedly. The chair was physically removed from the inn. That is a documented decision by the hotel management, not a story, an action. An American guest in room 19 woke to find a man in old-fashioned clothing sitting at the end of her bed. She went to her son's room and did not return to room 19 for the remainder of her stay. Room 16 has accumulated multiple accounts of guests witnessing what appears to be a duel between 2 men in 16th century clothing, one of whom is killed and dragged to an adjacent room. A member of staff quit after every bottle on a shelf fell simultaneously while he was tending the fireplace. One event. He did not come back the next day. The Mermaid Inn does not need to invent stories. It has had 900 years to collect the real ones. Number 2. The Langham Hotel, London. The Langham opened in 1865 as London's first purpose-built grand hotel. It has 380 rooms and suites. It is located on Portland Place, a few minutes from Oxford Circus. It is, by any measure, one of the most prestigious addresses in London. The BBC owned and operated the Langham building for a period during the 20th century. During that time, BBC staff, journalists, newsreaders, producers, documented at least 5 separate ghost accounts from different parts of the building. Not ghost tour operators, not paranormal investigators hired for a television program. Journalists, people professionally trained to be skeptical about unverified claims. Room 333 is the most documented room in the building. A BBC newsreader staying in that room woke to see a ball of fluorescent light that slowly resolved into a human shape, hovering above the floor, lower legs absent, dressed in elaborate Victorian evening wear. The figure moved towards him with arms extended. He left the room and went directly to colleagues. He returned with a colleague. The figure was still there, fading slowly. Other BBC staff reported the same room, the same figure, independently. The German prince. The accounts describe a nobleman who died in an upper-story room, either by his own action or by circumstances that were never fully established. He is reported moving through walls. He is associated with a sudden and specific drop in temperature that guests describe as immediate and localized, not a general chill in the room. In 2014, the England cricket team stayed at the Langham. Stuart Broad reported that taps in his bathroom turned themselves on when the lights were off and turned themselves off when the lights came on. He moved rooms. Ben Stokes reported difficulty sleeping on the third floor. Moeen Ali's partner refused to stay in the hotel at all. These are professional athletes with no particular reason to publicize ghost stories. Stuart Broad said it publicly. The Daily Mail and Espen Cricinfo both reported it. This is not folklore. This is a fast bowler moving rooms at a 5-star London hotel because something was wrong with the taps, and refusing to pretend otherwise. The Langham does not hide from its history. It leans into it, carefully, because the history is real, and the building is secure enough in its reputation not to need to exaggerate. Number 1. The Bull Hotel, Long Melford, Suffolk. On the 27th of December 1648, a man named Richard Everard was stabbed inside this hotel following an argument. His killer was a man named Roger Green. The argument, according to the records that exist, was political. This was the English Civil War period, and political arguments in that era had a habit of turning fatal. Everard's body was carried to room 4 and laid out there. When they came back for it, the room was empty. The body was gone. It has never been found. No explanation for the disappearance was ever officially recorded. No body was recovered. No arrest was made in connection with the missing corpse. Room 4 exists in a building that has been standing since the 15th century, in a market town in Suffolk, and it is available to book. The poltergeist activity associated with the bull, china and objects thrown across rooms, footsteps, doors, is hotel folklore and should be understood as such. What is not folklore is the killing. What is not folklore is the body in room 4. What is not folklore is the fact that the body was gone when people returned for it. 377 years later, nobody has explained that. Not because it is supernatural, because the record simply ends there, in that room, on that December night, with no body and no answer. That is the one that stays with you. 10 hotels. A cellar used to hold men before they were hanged outside the door. A staircase that may or may not have belonged to the castle where a queen was executed. A castle where a child's bones were found inside a wall. A professional cricketer who moved rooms at midnight and told the press about it. A body laid out in room 4 that was gone when morning came. None of these buildings are abandoned. None of them are ruins. Every single one of them has a reception desk, a breakfast menu, and a rating on a booking website. The rooms have numbers on the doors. The beds have clean sheets. And somewhere in each of them, if the accounts mean anything at all, something has been there a great deal longer than the current guests. If you have stayed in any of these hotels, or if you live near one and know things about it that did not make this list, put it in the comments. Not what you heard, what you actually experienced. There is a difference, and the comments section on this channel has proven that people know the difference. Subscribe. The next list is already being put together. You will recognize some of the locations. You will not want to stay in any of them.